Hello, I hope you're all doing well. In this video I want to show you how to make money with Alchemy in 3 levels: Novice, Advanced and Expert, each one being more difficult than the last but also having higher profit potential. Now before we get started, a few words on the setup for Alchemy money making. First of all, you want to reach 1 second Alchemy time, then you want to have a way to supply Alchemy tools, and some recipes in the expert section require Master 1 to get full efficiency. That's all stuff I went over in the second video, so if you need to catch up on these things, definitely check that video out first. Also, we will exclusively focus on making money on the Alchemy market. That's just because unfortunately Alchemy imperials are in such a bad state that you cannot get any money out of them. If Imperial Alchemy becomes viable at any point, I'll pin a comment, but until then Alchemy money making is all about the market, which also means that you would want to bring a value pack. And with that sorted out, it's time to look at our first recipe. This is what we started out the series with, the reagents. And I want to go over the 2 basic reagents, clear liquid and pure powder. They have no special requirements, you can craft them right at beginner 1. They're used in many alchemy recipes and they're super simple to craft. Let me show you. We only need 1 salt, sunrise herb, wild grass and purified water. And for the pure powder reagents you're gonna need 1 sugar and silver azalea instead. The 2 last ingredients are the same. All of the ingredients are super easy to get, either from the market, vendors or from nodes. Now let's take a look at the profit. We can use BDO to always show us the profit based on up-to-date market prices. To use BDO, what you want to do is enter your region in the top right, then head into the settings, enter your tax-related values. Then you want to scroll down to Alchemy and here enter your mastery as well as the craft time. Now earlier I talked about 1 second Alchemy. Why the hell is this at 1.2 seconds? Well, on sheet the minimum craft time is 1 second, but in practice the game adds a small delay between each craft. This is gonna be different from player to player. You can actually time your personal delay, but if you want to make your life easier, just go with the 0.2 here and call it a day. Now back to the recipe, you can see here this is at 41 million per hour. And specifically what that means is the profit from buying all of the ingredients at the prices indicated here and then selling the clear liquid reagents we crafted on the market. And of course you can upcraft the reagents into further alchemy recipes and make even more money. But I will say just crafting reagents for the market is a totally valid strategy to make money with alchemy. That's because just like in cooking, we can spam a cheap recipe like reagents to farm the alchemy byproducts. There are several kinds of byproducts and they will all make you money in some way, so let's quickly go over them. Starting with the mysterious catalyst, this item will drop randomly when crafting any recipe and you can turn that in for different items including clear liquid reagent, powders and contribution points. You get those when crafting any recipe and it's not mastery dependent at all, so it's like guaranteed income. The mysterious catalysts are getting a buff next patch and might already be out depending on when you're watching this video. The drop rate is gonna get buffed by 3.7 times, which means you get about 260 mysterious catalysts an hour, and that comes out to about 25 to 50 mil an hour depending on the price of the reagents. Then for the second type of byproduct, I want you to take a look at my crafting log here. You can see there's all kinds of random items in there. You can drop 3 kinds of items, from regular items like a small gold bar, to special items like memory fragment, to rare items like a 100 mil gold bar or even a sturdy golden alchemy stone. These drops scale with your mastery. The more mastery you have, the more of these you're gonna get. And most of the time you will come back to your alchemy with a lot of smaller items, but every once in a while you will find maybe a sturdy alchemy stone in your inventory. So I like to call them the lottery drops, because every once in a while you get lucky. The drop table actually got updated with the alchemy rework. A lot of the smaller and useless items got removed and more mid-range items got added, like dead tree essence and alchemy stone fragment. So these drops can actually bring in a decent amount of money on the side. Some nice people from the LiveSkill Discord actually tracked a bunch of crafts. So here's the data I have from Lady ZMAC. That's 80k crafts at 2k mastery, and you can get a rough idea of the drop rates here. I also wrote down a value for each item. In some cases it's just the market price, other times I have to do a bit of guesswork. So for example, the unknown seed is gonna have a max price of 20 mil on the market, but in reality it's worth much more than that. So I put it at a conservative 30 million, but honestly it might be worth a lot more than that, depending on how the price of detection elixirs develops and how the drop rate on these white truffles is. And you can also see that the unknown seeds bring in the most money out of all the byproducts by far. And tallying that all up, we've got 4.4 billion silver from the byproducts out of these 80k crafts. And that comes out to 167 million an hour just from these byproducts. Just keep in mind that this is at 2k mastery, so at lower mastery brackets you're gonna be making less money. But I will say that Alchemy Mastery scales quite linearly, so if you only have 1k Alchemy Mastery, you're gonna make about half that what someone at 2k Alchemy Mastery makes. Also from early testing, it looks like the tier of recipe might affect the drop rate on some of the byproducts, but it's way too early to say for sure, so I'll just pin a comment that I'll update once we have more data. Now there's one byproduct I want to talk about specifically, the unknown seed. This is one of the newly added byproducts, and this is what you may have heard of as the truffle mushroom hypha. The way this works is you combine an unknown seed with a truffle mushroom through simple alchemy and get a plantable truffle mushroom hypha. It takes 10 slots on your farms, which is quite a lot, so a small tip, you can use the 2 free fences that you get from quests. And once the seed is fully grown, you can harvest it and get around 60 truffle mushrooms. Keep in mind that you can only harvest but not breed the truffle mushroom hypha, so it's basically a one-time loot bag of truffle mushrooms. And there's even a small goodie: when harvesting the truffle mushroom hypha, you've got a small chance to get white truffle. This is like a truffle mushroom on steroids. You can use it like truffle mushrooms in a recipe and you will get a bunch of guaranteed elixir of sharp detection, the rare proc of the recipe. So overall, the unknown seed is super valuable. Now there's another type of byproduct I quickly want to mention, the shining powder. This only drops from certain recipes, and it's basically another byproduct that will generate you money on the side. But the thing is, if we look at all of the different byproducts we get, the mysterious catalyst, the lottery drops, and even the shining powder, you can make a ton of money from alchemy. We take an easy recipe like the reagents and spam the hell out of them and then collect our money from the byproducts. You can do that with any alchemy recipe, but I would say reagents are a good fit just because they're so cheap to craft and they're super AFK friendly. Alright, and with that we can move on to the advanced level. Now, what is the advanced level gonna be about? Well, let me show you. When running a worker empire, you will get a ton of different alchemy materials flooded into your storage, and chances are you have a ton of money sitting in these alchemy materials if you had your empire running for a long time. Also, if you were crafting bloods to power level your alchemy, like the Sinners and Clown's Blood, chances are you're gonna be sitting on a nice stockpile of them, and they're quite difficult to get rid of on the market. So I want to show you how to turn all of these things into money. So how do we find the best recipes for turning these materials into money? Now, there's 2 ways we could go about this. I could sit here and slap a list of recipes on screen that I recommend crafting. But the market changes all the time, so chances are by the time you're watching it, the list is outdated. So I would much rather show how you can find what to do with your materials on your own. That's gonna involve navigating the alchemy market, but I'll try my best to walk you through it step by step. This is the market alchemy table over on Videolytics, here under life skill and then alchemy. This table has lots of info. You will get a long list of recipes, the silver per hour, and for example the daily volume, so how many of these items sell per day on the market. And you also get the experience, which is nice, for example if you're trying to power level your alchemy. And this table has a really handy feature. So for example, say we're sitting on a ton of Clown's Blood from power leveling and we're trying to find recipes to liquidate it. We can type Clown's Blood into the search bar and Videolytics will show a list of recipes that Clown's Blood is used in. This is super useful. But I will say, if this is your first time stepping into the alchemy market, then even this list can be a bit overwhelming at first. So let's try to reduce this list down to maybe 2 or 3 items. And I will show you a strategy for doing that. If you watch my BDO guide, you'll know I refer to this as playing Wipeout with recipes. First of all, we're gonna nominate our candidates by marking them with a little heart. And from there, we're gonna play 3 rounds of Wipeout. First round is profit. So we're gonna use the sort function of this table to sort by the silver per hour and then kick out all of the recipes that are negative money. And you can see this list is already a bit more manageable. The second round is gonna be the daily volume, because obviously there's no point in crafting something if we can't sell it. So the question is, of course, what do we deem an acceptable daily volume? And I will say this obviously depends on your server, but I personally, and this is just my general rule, aim for at least 20k daily volume, so 20k items sold per day. Anything below that, you will run into insane amounts of market PvP and undercutting, but obviously it's up to you where to set that threshold. So we've sorted this list by daily volume and just gonna kick out everything below 20k. And there we go, only 5 candidates left. And for the final round, we're gonna look at the experience. Now you may ask, what the heck does the EXP have to do with profit? Well, EXP is actually a good indicator of how complex a recipe is. Usually high XP recipes are also very complex, so they have many different materials or they require bottleneck materials. And especially if you are new to the alchemy market, you can make your life a lot easier by just excluding the really complex recipes for the moment. So here we're gonna try to focus on the recipes below 1000 EXP, those are usually like easy to medium difficulty. And if you feel more comfortable with alchemy, you can also include the higher EXP recipes. And there we go, 2 recipes survived our Wipeout challenge, the Elixir of Shock and Human Hunt. So we now have 2 recipes that we know are good profit, they sell well on the market, and they are not too difficult to craft. And from here you can just open them in a new tab and take a look at the ingredients and figure out which of these you're actually able to craft with the materials you have available. So obviously the materials you have in your storage, but also what you can get from the market and from vendors. And it's not even a bad idea to craft both of them if you have the materials. In general, I would definitely try to diversify the recipes a bit, because demand on the market in alchemy is quite low, especially if you're used to the cooking market. And the more different recipes you're crafting, the more materials you're able to liquidate on the market. And that's pretty much it for the advanced method. So you could go through all of the materials in your storage and figure out the most profitable thing to craft with them. Now I will say, if you do this with all materials in your storage, this can get really tedious. So my advice is to focus on the big ticket items, that's the expensive items like for example traces, zaps and so on. By using up these items, you will also use some of the other items in your storage naturally. And with that, we have arrived at the expert level. Here we'll take what we've seen on the advanced level and go one step further into mass producing elixirs. And if you're thinking you need super high mastery or levels to do that, I got good news. You don't need much mastery at all, and you only need master 1. And that's where you get the maximum yield on the high-end elixirs. So for example, if we take a look at the description of Elixir of Frenzy, you'll see that Artisan 1 is required to obtain the rare proc. But the game doesn't tell you the full truth here. When trying to craft this at Artisan 1, you will actually have reduced yield on the rare proc, and you only get the full yield 10 levels after the level needed to craft it, so Master 1. And in the expert section, we're gonna run into quite a few recipes with their rare proc at Artisan 1, so that's why you're gonna want to be Master 1 to get the full yield. And I also want to talk about mastery. So what Alchemy Mastery does is increase the number of elixirs you get with each craft. For example, I'm currently crafting Elixir of Shock and get 1 to 4 elixirs each craft. That comes out to 2.5 on average. Now the higher my mastery, the higher the chance to get a 4 proc. So that's gonna lift up the average, and it goes all the way to 3.25 at 2k mastery. But keep in mind that Alchemy Mastery has no effect on the rare proc. And there are lots of exceptions to the proc rate, like perfumes always proccing 1, so they are completely unaffected by mastery. And with that, we can turn to the elixir production. There are multiple directions that you could take this to. You could produce drafts, or you could look into crafting elixirs for the elixir rotation. These can be quite profitable as well. Or you could even look into crafting some of the perfumes, like the Spirit Perfume Elixir. And since that's way too much to cover all in a single video, I have decided to focus on only one of them, the draft production. And I'll take this as an example to show you what it's like to craft elixirs on a large scale, and especially get a hold of the mass of materials that you're gonna need, including the bottleneck materials like saps, traces, fruits, and so on. And with that, it's time to cut to past summer, explaining you how to make the drafts. Now the way drafts work, taking giants here as an example, is you take 3 different elixirs and combine them together with the tea of the following moon through simple alchemy into a draft. And on top of that, you can also craft 10 drafts at once by using 1 Ebolab's essence. Also keep in mind that you can use the blue procs of the elixirs to replace 3 green procs in this recipe. So for example, instead of using 3 elixir of shock, I could use 1 elixir of strong shock. Now you won't find the drafts in the alchemy table, that's because they fall under processing since they're a product of simple alchemy. Now you can see there are different kinds of drafts, but keep in mind what we learned on the advanced level, we always want to see if they actually sell on the market. And judging by the daily volume, there are really only 4 types of drafts that we can produce and sell on a large scale: the Giants, Verdure, Frenzy and Beast draft. Now the Frenzy draft takes an item that only comes from grinding, and there is a change coming where this item is sellable on the market, so I assume by the time this video comes out you can actually buy this item on the market. Now, since the draft takes 3 elixirs all with their subcomponents, this recipe can become insanely complex and it's easy to get lost. So I want to walk you through how you would go about getting all the materials for making this draft. The very first thing I would do is go through the materials and identify the bottleneck materials, so materials you can't buy off the market. So here potential bottlenecks are the Fruit of Sun in Oil of Corruption, as well as the Trace of Violence and the Cedar Sap. So the important thing here is being able to provide the bottleneck materials, everything else you can then sort out later. Now the big question is, of course, how do we get our hands on these materials and how do we do that efficiently? So I want to show you my alchemy material guide. Here I went ahead and researched all of the different ways in which you can get alchemy materials. So you can go into this sheet and say, okay, for example, we need cedar sap. So there is a node that gives it near trend as well as gathering rotations, right? Then you can click on this link here and be guided to a gathering rotation. And of course, if this item is sold out, then it's not a bad idea to set a pre-order on the market. So that's the sap sorted out. Then we also need Fruit of the Sun. So again, go into the sheet here, see, okay, fruits come, for example, from farming or from gathering. So you could set up a farmer for citron, for example, or you could start looking into wild herb gathering. And if you haven't already, I would definitely put a pre-order on this item as well. Now, how exactly you go about getting these materials is up to you. You could either just rely on pre-orders and nodes and let your materials flow in passively, or if you really want to mass produce these drafts, you can go out and gather them or start farming. And once you get all of the bottlenecks assembled, you can then start looking into the other materials. Like for example, lion blood, do you gather that or maybe just buy it straight off the market? How the heck do we get tiger mushroom again? Right, Control F in the sheet, see there's a vendor for it, okay, that's sorted out. And what I really like about drafts is that there's a ton of potential for optimization. So for example, say we can't get our hands on Fruit of the Sun, no problem, we can just buy the Oil of Corruption on the market at the cost of a bit of profit. Or sometimes you'll run into a situation where crafting one of the subcomponents isn't profitable. So for example here we can increase our profit by skipping the Sinner's Blood. So in the end it's really up to you to decide how you want to go about making this, which of the subcomponents to craft, which ones to buy on the market and so on. And that's pretty much it. Now, if you got any questions about this video, if there's anything I forgot or got wrong, then please leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you. And I'll see you in a future video. Take care.